Welcome to In Confidence, where what we share in confidence helps us grow in confidence. This season is all about the last quarter challenge. Each week, we're unveiling a micro moment, a challenge for you to take on that will help ladder up your confidence so that we finish this year strong and we take that energy into 2026. This particular micro moment this week is something that's really hard for me personally. I will tell you now that this is not one that I do very well, and I need this micro moment more than anyone else. It's all about saying no. What if our confidence didn't come from doing more, but actually from saying no? So how do we build confidence when we say no to things, to people, to actions in our life? And this one is hard for me because I grew up as a people pleaser. I always want to say yes because I feel like I want to be loved. And this particular challenge is one of the harder ones. We're really laddering up because every challenge we've taken on so far has been an act of courage, noticing your own growth, sharing a micro brag, giving a compliment, or finding a confidence anchor. This is the one that's hard because it requires you to stand up for yourself and what matters to you and what you want to prioritize, which means you have to start from a very strong place. Why we've done all the challenges to get this place. You have to be your strongest version of you to be able to say no, because when we prioritize our own energy and we say no, for example, to someone else, we feel uncomfortable. Or if we say no to something in our lives, we feel like we've cut off an option, right? All of a sudden, I've said no to something and now the decision tree has gotten slimmer. We all hate saying no. And especially when you say no to someone, it feels like you're letting them down. You risk feeling judged by them. You don't know how they feel about you. And that fear of a singular no changing someone's impression of us holds us back from saying no. It could be, oh, that person's difficult or unhelpful or self-centered, and it feels scary. But I think it is a helpful practice to think about because it allows us to prioritize what matters in our life. Taylor Swift recently said on the New Heights podcast, and I feel like it's a meme that was put all around the world, you should think of your energy as if it's expensive, as if it's a luxury item. Not everyone can afford it. Not everyone has invested in you in order to be able to have the capital for you to care about this. What you spend your energy on, that's the day. And this is the mindset that we are trying to create when we practice saying no. Here's the science behind why this matters. Every time you say yes, you engage your prefrontal cortex. It's the region of the brain that controls planning, impulse control, long-term goals. When you're overloaded with too many commitments, this area actually fatigues, it gets tired. And it leads to poor judgment and weakened self-control. It's actually the opposite effect of the intent of that part of the brain. Saying no preserves your energy for what matters most. And there's a ton of science behind this idea of when we say no, it actually allows us to redeploy the energy of the brain to things that matter. And from a reward standpoint, our brains release dopamine when others approve of us. And that's why saying yes can feel super rewarding. But over time, it creates a loop of craving approval hits, right? I need to crave someone else's approval. Saying no rewires the brain to reinforce intrinsic rewards like self-respect and alignment with values. In fact, when we say no, it may trigger a short-term discomfort, but long-term, it creates relief in our brain. The amygdala, which is your fear center or your brain's threat detector, it's triggered when you anticipate conflict or disappointing someone, which makes saying no feel scary. But with practice, the amygdala learns that saying no isn't life-threatening and your stress response actually decreases over time. So there's a lot of thinking around, we always want to say yes because there's a dopamine hit of doing that. But when we say no, we preserve our energy for what matters, and long-term, we reduce our stress levels. Now, personally, I think one of the reasons I historically have always said yes is I took our superpower quiz 6 years ago, And there is one of my highest superpowers is performing. Like I need the validation of an audience. I love the energy of being loved. And there's an opposite superpower called self-sustaining, which is I like myself. I don't need to impress you. Other people's opinions of me, while they're interesting, they don't define how I see myself. I actually scored 0 on self-sustaining when I took our quiz 6 years ago, which means you write the book you most need to read yourself. Like I needed to write a whole book around how to increase my self-sustaining levels. And when you don't have much of the self-sustaining superpower, you actually overcommit to everything because you think the only way to be validated, to be loved, to be respected is to do things for others and to say yes. And you care deeply what other people think of you. What I started to learn that as I started to see my own intrinsic value, and as I started to say, you know what? If I say no, the world didn't collapse. And in fact, I had more energy to do other things or to do the things that really created value in my life. We're going to have our guest later this week, Neen James, talk about how she says no. And I love the way she frames it. She talks about have clear criteria around what you say yes to. And she says, I say yes to things that I love and am passionate about, people I love, and places I love. And if all of those are a yes, then it's a yes. If one of them is a no, I think hard about it. And then I actually am able to say no without guilt because it's aligned with what matters in my life and the people that matter in my life. And so saying no actually is hard because you feel guilt and you feel judgment. But you know, when you say no, I think you have to make sure you're not disappointing yourself first. So think about, am I disappointing myself or am I disappointing the other person? And I think that flip gives you the permission to say no pretty actively. I personally love adding this decision criteria to what I say yes to. I also have added something which I call the no and rule because I do want to still be helpful. And I will say to someone, if I care about them or it's a new relationship, I always say no isn't the end of the conversation. I will offer another option. So someone recently asked me to write a blurb for their new book. I only write blurbs if I have the time to actually read the book because I think it matters that that blurb comes from a place of where I've actually read the content and it's made a difference in my life. And I told this person, I don't have the time to read your book, so it would be hard for me to get a blurb done. However, what I can do is I will pre-order the book. And once I receive the book, I will write them a review on Amazon once I've had a chance to read the book. Because reviews on Amazon after the book is published makes a huge difference. And so that was a way that I could say no and. Or oftentimes people will say, hey, I'd love 15 minutes on your calendar. And I'll say, this week is actually pretty tough. Can you send me a text message or a DM on LinkedIn? I always respond within 72 hours. Not necessarily an email. My emails inbox is overloaded. So I give them other avenues where I'm on the subway or I'm in a taxi cab and I can respond quickly to something that they need. And if they really need the 15 minutes, then we can move forward from there. I also find it interesting around how transparent you have to be with the people that matter in your life. So if there's someone that really matters in my life, I will be really transparent with them around why I'm saying no. So here's all the things that are going on. It's not that I don't love you or I don't care about you, but here's all the things that are on my plate. So it's a no now. However, it's a yes on something else, or it's a yes in the future. If there's someone who I don't necessarily have a deep relationship with, or I don't feel like I owe an explanation to, I decrease the levels of transparency. So I'll say, hey, you know what? I can't, I'm at my max limit, and I won't explain further. I think the more you explain, the more people can problem solve. So make sure that who you're transparent with around why you're saying no is someone that you're okay with them engaging with you because you care about them. And most people will respect the decision. I also think you can apply this in terms of things that you're going to say no to yourself. There are a couple of things where I've had to just say, you know what, that's not something I'm going to do. this week for myself, not saying no to someone else, but saying no to myself, and basically realizing that I'm doing it in the service of creating space for what matters. So here's the action I'm asking you all to take. Say no once this week to something small. And I think you want to really start with something small, especially if you're not great at it. And some people, by the way, are really good at saying no. I'm talking to the percentage of us who are bad at saying no and overcommit and overpromise and extend ourselves too far. I think it's something like pass an obligation on to someone else in your family, in your team, in your circle, so that you can rest or take a moment for yourself. We don't have to explain when we need a moment to ourselves. Say no to yourself in terms of scrolling or sending that one last email before you go to bed. Maybe you just say no. I have a practice with my friend Jane Park where I'll say, hey, I'm going to leave the office today at 5. I usually leave at 5:30 or 6. I'm just going to say no to looking at my email anymore. Or I'm going to just say no to doing any more work past 7 p.m. Can I have a permission slip? She's like, absolutely. You need to rest. You need to sleep. You're going to be better tomorrow if you just say no to more work after this deadline. And that just, by the way, decreases my stress levels. Sometimes you need a shame buddy like my best friend, Jane Park, who just says, yeah, you can say no to doing more work. Or maybe decline an invitation. It's possible that you need to say no. Sometimes, and our guest, Neen James, is going to talk about it. She'll say, you know what, I'm working on something really important. It's going to be a no for the next 4 weeks, but don't stop inviting me to things, because when this period is over, I would still love to be invited to happy hour. It's just a no for the next 4 weeks. She puts a time horizon on it, and she explains the importance of that time horizon. I want you to say no, and maybe you say no and. No, I can't help you get that done, but here's 2 other people who are more qualified or have more resources or have more time to help you with that ask. Here's why it's helpful. Every no is actually a yes. This changed my life when I realized this. It's a yes to something you're prioritizing, whether it's rest, focus, something that you really need to get done in your life. So every time you say no, it's a yes to something else. And once you make that flip, saying no doesn't create guilt or fear in your body anymore. Boundaries actually signal self-respect. And I think that's the self-sustaining superpower that we write about in our book is really about self-worth and self-respect. And so they teach others how you want to be treated. In terms of how this challenge builds on the other ones, I think when you've actually given yourself credit, when you've seen your strengths, when you feel growth, when you feel your strongest, that's when you can have the courage to draw a line. I think drawing a line requires a deep sense of awareness of what you're protecting. So I'm not letting you down. I'm protecting something that matters to me. I'm protecting myself and my own strengths and the ways in which I want to spend my time and my mind share. So this week, practice one no, just one. Push through the discomfort and recognize the positives of your decision to say no. Confidence sometimes is just about putting yourself first, and that's what saying no does. I'm really excited to hear what you say no to this week and how it makes a difference in your life. Please share it on social media. As you all know, on LinkedIn, we're posting a challenge a week, and we want you in the comments to share how you've practiced it, how it made a difference for you. We'll be giving away something every week to at least one person who comments. And I'm excited because this particular challenge has already made a difference in my life. I feel stronger every time I can say no without guilt or discomfort. I hope you love this episode of In Confidence. I hope you're leaving this space stronger than the way you entered it. Please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. I mean, it might be someone you're saying no to and why. I'm not coming to that party, but here's why, because you're my no practice for the week. Subscribe so you never miss a moment of inspiration. And in the words of my 9-year-old self, I see you, I value you, and I believe in you. This is In Confidence.